Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of intellectual brainstorming and academic excellence. As you all know, this platform is for academic brainstorming to help our students in their careers in their academic field of endeavor. Now, we want to use this medium to say a very big thank you to our returning subscriber. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to this channel, and also don't forget to click on the notification button and also leave your comment on how to serve you better. So today we're going to go into political economy, political economy, political economy. Now, last time we looked at the classical political economy. We said that the classical political economy was postulated by Adam Smith in his book published in 1716 titled The Inquiry into the Causes and the Wealth of Nations. And we said Adam Smith, as a result of his book, laid the foundation for classical political economy. And that classical political economy is talking about a free market economic system as opposed to a mercantilist system that was based on what monopolistic idea or system. And also we dived a little bit into what we call mercantilism. We said that mercantilism, uses gold and silver as a measurement of a nation's wealth. And apart from that, the mercantilism also encourages export more than import. Then we also said that nations in relations to each other, they use sometimes military might or to settle their misunderstanding, economic misunderstanding. Then we also said that mercantilism, was a system or an economic system that was popular during the 16th down to the 18th century. Before we now dive into what we call the classical political economy. So today we're going to look at what we call Marxian political economy. Marxian political economy. Marxian political economy. Now, the Marxian political economy was a theory that was postulated by the man called Karl Marx and Friedrich Engel. Friedrich Engel and Karl Marx. And it was further, written on by the man called V.I. Lenin in his book titled Imperialism, Imperialism, the highest of capitalism, stage of capitalism. Imperialism, the highest stage of what? Of capitalism. Um, For those of you that do not know the meaning of what we call capitalism, we're talking about an economic political system where the means of production, distribution, and exchange are controlled by what? By private individual, and profit is the guiding principle. Now, when we're talking about classical political economy at that time, in our previous topic, we said classical political economy became popular because nation states were moving from the era of feudalism down to the era of what? Of capitalism, and that industrial revolution has resulted into a vast changes in the society. So the Marxian political economy now is an economic critique of the classical political economy. So it was criticizing, it was opposing, it was antagonistic of what? Of the classical political economy. So the Marxian political economy, as postulated by Karl Marx, was there to look at the shortcomings of the classical political economy. Now, the Marxian political economy was looking at what we call class struggle, class struggle, production, production, distribution, exchange, you know, surplus value, surplus value in the society. Now, by the time we look at all these things now, we'll be able to see how Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and what and V.R. Lenin have been able to criticize or talk about the shortcomings of what of the classical political economy. Now, what do you understand by class? In every society, there are classes. In every society, there are classes. And when you talk about classes, we're not talking about a class where you have students or teachers teaching each other. I mean, trying to pass knowledge to the students in the class or pupils. No, that's not what we're talking about. When you talk about classes in society, you are talking about social stratification. We are talking about the categories of what of human class in society, either the rich or what or the poor. So in every society, you have categories of what of people, those that have and the what and the have not. You have those what that are being exploited and the exploiter, those that would exploit and the exploiter. So in other words, there is a disequilibrium or there is an inequality in the society in the sense that those that have more and those that don't have do not have at all. So what is taken from those that do not have is given to those that already have. So the society is what is disequilibrium. The society is not what is not equal. That is what Marxian political economy is trying to talk about here. That the society is what is unequal. That the society is what is meant is favorable to some people and is unfavorable to some people. So because of the class now, there's going to be what we call what a class struggle between these two. So because of this equilibrium, there's going to be a class struggle between the have and the have not. That's what the Marxian political economy is talking about now. Yeah. So in determining the Marxian political economy, we're going to look at what we call the historical, material, and the dialectical in the society. So we're going to look at what we call the historical. Now, when you talk about the historical, you're talking about the investigation of what? Of the production relations. That is the historical. Investigation of the production relations. So, the historical, in other words, what we're trying to say here, let me break it down so that I can be able to understand it before I dive into the historical, the material, and the dialectical. What we're trying to say here is that the Marxian political economy, in order to be able to pass home his message or his ideals, decided or used what we call dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism. So Marxian political economic system is based on dialectical materialism. So Karl Marx decided to dive into what? Dialectical materialism in order to be able to explain what we call the Marxian political economy. And what is dialectical materialism? If you have been following my topics, we have delved into what we call dialectical materialism. When we talk about the spirit, when we talk about the thesis, the antithesis and what? And the thesis in society, the synthesis. If you could remember, we mentioned thesis, antithesis, and the synthesis, which is the Hegelian principle. Hegelian principle. For those that have been following my lecture, the Hegelian principle. So the Hegelian principle was talking about what? The philosophy of the thesis, the antithesis, and the what? And the synthesis. So then another one is that it's talking about the law of unity and conflict of opposites. That is the dialectical materialism there. So if you want to know more about the dialectical materialism, you need to go back to that topic to go and watch that video. So it's talking about the law of unity and conflict of opposites. Then it's talking about the negation of the negation. Negation of the negation. So very interesting topic. So for you to be able to get a picture of that, then you have to go back to what we call the dialectical materialism. So the dialectical materialism is talking about what? The dialectic that takes place in society. It's talking about the class struggle that in every society there is a continuation of what? Of motion. And in the continuation of what? Of motion, there arises what we call conflict. And for society to be stable, there is always a class struggle in between what? In between the classes. in order to create an equal society. Dialectical materialism. The dialectics of what? Of materialism. So that dialectical materialism is what Hamas is using here, talking about what? The historical, the material, and what? And dialectics. So if you talk about the historical, we are talking about the investigation of what? Of the production relations in the process of what? Of the emergence of what? Of and the of what development. In the emergence of what? Of development. That's what this one is talking about, the historical. What is the historical background? So it is historical in nature. So it attempts to dive into what? Into the investigation of that production relations. So the production relations is what? Is not an equal one. The production relations what? Is meant to favor some at the expense of the other. Then we also talk about what? The material. So the material is talk about the consideration of what? Of the process of the object reality is what? Is the consideration of the object reality or the objective of the reality. That is the second one. Then the third one is talk about what? The contradiction of the social forces. The contradiction of the social forces. So there is a contradiction of the social forces. And what are the social forces? We are talking about what they have and they have not, the exploited and the exploiter, the rich and the poor and the elite, the hoi polloi. Who are the hoi pollois? The hoi pollois are what? Are the downtrodden, the poor in the society, those that do not what? That do not have. So, Karl Marx, in order to explain the Marxian political economy system, is saying that the system is what? Is exploitative in nature. The system is exploitative in nature. It is meant to benefit some people at the expense of the other. So Marxian political economy is meant to open the eyes of what? Of the have-not, that the reason for their backwardness, the reasons for their exploitation, the reasons for their poverty, the reasons for their illiteracy, the reasons why they are not enjoying nature the way it's supposed to be is because they are being exploited by the rich, who are the bourgeoisie in the society. Now, in order to understand this concept very well, Kamas is saying that there should be a what? A kind of a resistance or revolution, so that an egalitarian society where every human being is equal can now be created. That's what he's saying. So it's about the what? The creation of an egalitarian society where everybody is what? Is equal. Where everybody is what? Is equal. Now, I mentioned something. I said VI learning or learning wrote something what on imperialism, the highest stage of what? Of capitalism, highest stage of what? Of capitalism. What learning is saying is that what? That capitalism itself is exploitative. Capitalism is what? Is exploitative. Is meant to favor some at the expense of the other ones. So it is imperialistic. It is exploitative. It is not equal. It is based on profit. It is based on surplus value. And what do you understand by the surplus value? The surplus value is the profit that is being made. Now, the surplus value, when it is being made there, is not given to the worker, but it's going to the bourgeoisie, thereby creating what? A disequilibrium. Thereby creating what? A non-egalitarian class, where you have the rich and the poor. That's what Kamas is saying. VIN is saying there. So it's talking about the what? That imperialism is the highest stage of what? Of a capitalism. And that because of this, the so-called opoloi or the have-not should resist, there should be a class struggle between them, so that there can be a what? An egalitarian society where everybody what? Can be equal in the society. But unfortunately, despite this theory of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and what? And Lenin, unfortunately, capitalism has gone beyond the measure today. In that the countries of the world now are diving into what we call capitalism. Are diving into what we call capitalism, because capitalism what seems to be the order of what? Of the day. Unfortunately, also capitalism, which is what? To be the order of the day, has been able to marginalize some people to become what? Periphery. Some countries are regarded as what as periphery. Now, what are the periphery countries? We talk about countries that are underdeveloped, countries that are still developing, countries that are still struggling with development. Their society has not been developed, but in such countries, you have large number of people that earn lower income on daily basis. They earn something like $1 per day, $1 per day. Whereas in the advanced countries or in the so-called developed countries, they earn about $15 to $20 per day. Not even per day here. They earn about $20 to $15 per hour. But in the developing countries, you earn what? $1 or $2 in a day. So you can see this equilibrium there. So the periphery countries are what? Are now the poor countries. They are now the poor countries. They are the dumping, they are the dump site. What do I mean by the dump site? These are so-called countries because of their level of underdevelopment. They consume fairly used goods. They cannot afford to buy new goods. So because of that, they depend on what? On fairly used goods that are being bought from other developing countries, like clothes, like cars, like shoes, like suit. Just mention it. They depend on all these things. So they have become what? A dumping site to the developed countries. So because of the disequilibrium, the world has been divided into what? Into the developed countries and the what? And the developing countries. And the word developing is a word that is used by the so-called advanced countries to deceive what? The so-called underdeveloped countries. Because the word that's supposed to use here is underdeveloped, not even developed. Because developing is a continuous process. Is a continuous process. And over the years, right from the time of their independence up to now, the story is still the same. There's still no what element of development in these societies. So what Kamas is now saying is that the so-called underdeveloped countries should take their destiny into their hands and develop themselves, by doing away with capitalism, by doing away with imperialism. Because the highest stage of capitalism was imperialism, that is domination. And that's why today you have what we call media imperialism, social imperialism, political imperialism, economic imperialism, cultural imperialism. They are all forms of imperialism. Economic imperialism, the economy of the so-called developing country is tied to the apron string of what? Of the developed countries. Culturally, we dress like them. We wear their suit, we wear their shirt, we wear their shirt, we wear their ties, and culturally, on the aspect of what of these developing countries, we don't even value our own culture any longer. We buy into their culture. Politically, we practice their political system. Economically, we are nowhere to be found. Technologically, it is nothing. So Marxian political economy is saying that there should be an hegemony, there should be an equilibrium, there should be a class struggle, there should be a system where the so-called underdeveloped should what? Should also attain their level of what? Of development by cutting ties with capitalism because it is imperialistic. Because it is imperialistic. So they need to break from what? From the exploitative what? International capital system. The exploitative tendencies of what? Of international capitalist system. And what are the international capitalist system? We are talking about the multinational companies. Multinational companies. MNC. We are talking about the so-called financial institutions like IMF, World Bank, and the rest of them. So what Kamas is saying is an eye opener to the developing countries that they should cut off from the exploitative international capitalist system. So they should, in this sense, um, try and adopt a system that will be proactive, that will help them or enable them to have their own form of independence. Because when you talk about independence, most of these developing countries have been given independence, but they have not been given economic independence. They don't have social independence. They don't have political independence. They don't have cultural independence. They don't have media independence. So the independence there is utopia, is a mirage. Is utopia, it's a mirage. It does not even exist. So the multinational corporations, the comprador bourgeoisie, the comprador bourgeoisie, the multinational companies, the so-called financial institutions, the so-called political system, the so-called grant and aid to the developing countries, they are all forms of what? Of economic exploitative tendencies. So on this note, we have looked at what we call the Marxian political economy by saying that what the Marxian political economy is talking about the historical, the material, and the dialectical aspect of what? Of Marxian political economy. And we said when we're talking about the historical perspective, we're talking about what? The investigation of what? Of the productive relations. Then when you talk about the material, you talk about what? The consideration of what? Of the process of the object of a reality. Then when you talk about dialectic or dialectical, we are talking about the distortion, the contradiction of the social forces that exist among the classes. So Marxian political economy is talking about what? A disequilibrium system, a system where everybody is not equal. There are the exploiters and there are the exploited. But what he's saying here is that the ones that is being exploited should cut off themselves from the international capitalist system that is exploiting them so that they can have an egalitarian society. And when you talk about the exploitation here, we are talking about so many forms of exploitation: media exploitation, social exploitation, cultural exploitation, economic exploitation, political exploitation. They are all forms of exploitation. And that's why today we have the developing countries and we have what? The developed countries. The developed countries are what? Are the core countries. They have development, they have technology, they have good health system, they have growth system, they have economic system, they have a very sound political system. Then you have the developing countries where you have a misconstrued or a delusional political system, a delusional economic system, a delusional social system, a delusional cultural system. You have a system that is distorted. You have a system that is contagious. You have a system that is underdeveloped. You have a system that is still developing but has not gotten to any stage. And that's why in this topic, in this platform, we're still going to talk about development administration. We're going to talk about what we call development and underdevelopment. When you talk about development, what do you mean by development? It's going to look at the theories of development, various theories of development. Then we can now be able to know where does these developing countries or underdeveloped countries, where do they actually belong to? So the world's economic system is what? Is exploitative in nature. And that is why it is meant to favor the core countries at the expense of what? Of the periphery countries. And that's why if you may follow my lectures, I've lectured on what we call center of the periphery theory. I've done that lecture. Go and check my videos, you see that lecture there. Center of the periphery theory. They'll be able to know more about what I'm talking about now. So on this note, we're going to round up. My name once again is David Oni, and my YouTube channel is what? Is David Oni Wiz. Please try and subscribe to this channel so that I can have more of our videos. Then don't forget to drop your comment and also click on the notification so that you can be informed anytime we upload a video on the internet. Thank you. Till meet next time. Bye bye. Goodbye. Yeah.